seat comes back to allow easier entry. Nice touch. Reminds me of the cars of the 90s. Again, Honda is going back to the 90s in a good way. I'm here for it. I think we all should be. Go back to the peak of automobile making. Why wouldn't we? In fact, as I've been saying since then, why do we leave it in the first place? Trends and fads fade, best practices endure, and I think Honda is getting back to best practices. So here we go. All right. Pretty good isolation there. Clickety-click with the wheels, as everybody seems to be crazy about right now. Volume knob. Good sight lines. These pillars are thinner. The windshield glass is more upright. I don't quite understand why the hood is so long. Actually, let me take that back. I understand why the hood is so long. They're trying to make this look like a more expensive car with the engine facing in the other direction. But you, given that you've come across this channel, are smarter than that. You know that it is just a psychological sleight of hand. So here we go. Easy visibility. Liking that aspect. In fact, I'd say the rear view mirror is probably the only low point with visibility. Speaking of mirrors, need to get these better adjusted. All right, we are a go. Now I like to drive my cars, at least initially, in econ mode. So let's see how it feels in my usual default setting. The reason is I find that today's turbocharged engines feel way too sudden when you're not using something like econ. Definitely a CVT transmission. Another thing that, well, I'm not as much of a detractor as many are when it comes to CVTs. I think they have their purpose, even if it's not to my taste. These revs are hanging is I selected S instead of D on the shifter here. If I go to D, these revs will drop, of course, like a normal everyday. That's nice as I bend it into a corner. I would say that feels composed, fairly balanced. I wouldn't go as far as say chuckable, but the car is stable. You feel like the suspension is quite firm. And even the lane departure that just told me who's boss, even lane departure, it's a kind of a gentle pulsing through the wheel. It's not an alarming bzzz. There is something soothing to this car. I think a client of mine said it best yesterday. She's in the market for this car, and that's why I'm taking the time to drive it today. She said it reminded her of a Lexus. And she said, like, that's not I'm not trying to insult the car. It's just, it doesn't feel as much like what I expect a Honda to feel. It feels like what I expect a Lexus to feel like. And I can see what she's talking about. Engine's a little gravelly. It feels like a bit of a throwback to internal combustion, but in a good way, I guess. I think the reason I'm not as... That's nice. It's got some leeches. Got some leeches for tires. That's good. This is a firmly set up car. This is definitely a tall Civic. From the interior to the sizing, it's hard to see. Again, as something my client mentioned as well. I told her, I don't know why you would get a Honda RAV4. I'm so sorry, a Toyota RAV4 when a Honda CRV is available, especially the 23 model being the all new, or I should say significantly new, because there is some carryover. Why would you get a Toyota RAV4 over this? This is just a much nicer car. Quite content, actually, and I'm, as you know, quite snotty about these sorts of things. And I'm not really trying to, but hustling along fairly easily and rapidly. In fact, I think I'm going to do a little spin around so I can get on the highway. Let's go back to S. See if this thing wakes up a little bit. Yeah. When you put the transmission lever into S, it's like the powertrain is in sync with the suspension. Maybe S stands for sync more than sport. Sync the car to your wishes, sync the car to its other systems. Got a great road here. A great road with a stop sign. If I remember correctly, we're rejoining another great road. Brake pedal feel is not too sharp, but feels reassuring. If you don't want to hear your motor, you're going to want to avoid S. So I'm going to go back to drive. Instead, I will try, I've been in eco mode thus far. I'm going to go to normal. So we have the transmission in drive, and now we have the throttle in normal. A little bit more alert under the toe, under the ball of the foot, I should say. I do wonder if the suspension is going to be a little too firm for those coming from other cars, but I think it's a good type of firm. I hate the firm but not harsh trope, but I'd say that applies here. This is in fact firm but not harsh. And the impacts are muted. I'm not hearing a lot of tire slap. I'm not hearing a lot of resonance from the tires. But man, that engine, must we do that? And that brings me to the actual car I think I would go with if I was looking at a CRV. I think I would be going with the hybrid. You get more torque. You don't get the turbocharger. You don't get a CVT. You get a naturally aspirated 2-liter 4-cylinder motor. I'm ahead of myself there. In Honda tradition, natural aspiration. And you don't get a CVT. You get a pretty complex to describe transmission setup, but the outcome of all their efforts is they've tried to make it feel more like a transmission with stepped gears. And as I probably don't have to tell you, that's a really satisfying feeling. Let me seek out a highway if I can. I might be too lost for that. doesn't feel expensive. It doesn't feel cheap. It doesn't feel loose. It doesn't feel jittery. It's kind of a Goldilocks car, I have to say. Like, looking around this cabin, this is a nice place to be. Noise is well suppressed, again with my lane departure. So I'm going to turn in here. Very interesting, Honda. I love it when you actually make the effort. That's true of any car company, but I find that when Honda actually makes the effort, it goes back again to those 90s. It goes back to when they were doing things like no one else seemed to know how to. And they used their how-to make some pretty remarkable cars. Yeah, but again, I couldn't stand to listen to the engine. And combine the engine with the CVT. This car reminds me of when I first drove the Honda Insight, the current generation, or last generation, I should say, of Insight. It was a lovely car in search of a powertrain to match. It used to be that Honda's powertrains were the entire car was great, but their powertrains were something else. Like, no one else could do a powertrain like Honda could, in the way that Honda could. I'd say at this point, it feels like the powertrains are doing the vehicles a disservice. And if you want that Honda of your powertrain experience, you end up having to go over to Mazda. Mazda does not have a CVT. Mazda believes in a high compression, non-turbocharged engine. Well, at least they did until market pressures forced them to do otherwise. But if you are picking up on my my theme here is, I wish this car had a motor and transmission to match, and I think the hybrid will give it that. I think the hybrid will complete the package, and like I said before about the transmission syncing with the chassis when you put it in S, I think there's a strong chance that the hybrid is going to be better in sync with how refined the rest of this package is. This is a very solid effort, and it's a very solid feeling car. If we're in an SUV hatchback, these things tend to be pretty noisy, but not this one. This one doesn't give off those vibes, no pun intended. No paddle shifters here, so I'll go back to S. And now I'll take this little road, open a school bus, I'll slow it down. Remarkably nice car. This is one of those test drives where I'm, as a courtesy, wanting to get back and give the car a chance to be experienced by another person. But at the same time, I don't want to give it back. I don't want it to be experienced by another person. I want to keep driving. And I think a car like this, well, that says a lot. It says a lot that I didn't just want to start something special. I wanted to keep on going with it. Honda is engineering again. I think we're coming out of a very dark period. If you choose well, we're coming out of a dark period for not only Honda but the industry. We're coming out of a period where companies were, well, for a long while they were just iterating and cranking out as many products as possible, and that ended up making their cars these commodities that were almost indistinguishable from one another to drive and to own. But I think we're entering kind of a 90s style slugfest again, a bit of a renaissance when it comes to cars, where companies are having to try again. bridge followed by a 25-mile-an-hour corner. Sounds like a job for a tall Civic. Man, there are going to be some people who buy this and are going to say, I didn't used to enjoy driving, but I do now. This is like an easy button for driving. And I think the hybrid, when it gets rid of this droning, the hybrid will really appeal to people who want a soothing, easy to control, comfortable car. Easy to get in and out of, easy to load, easy to carry folks in, easy to swerve and avoid something. This car is kind of like an easy button. You know, Honda's supposed to be helpful, right? The helpful Honda salesperson. That was something I helped Honda work on about a decade ago, a little bit more. And I think this car is helpful. This car is, I don't know, it's kind of friendly. It's got that Asimo Honda, that Aibo Honda, the Honda lawnmower Honda. You know, the ease and the integrity of the thing, the earnestness, the friendliness. Yes, I definitely cannot wait to drive the hybrid version, because as you can tell, I'm having to raise my voice. To combat the engine's drone. And I'd say noise level definitely picks up at speed. You know, you have to remember, we're in a brick. We're in a big boxy thing. But it's really not... Think of it like a white noise machine. It's not, there's not rustling, and it's like a set of tires that you can hear the tires, but it's not a droning sound, not an annoying sound. It's more of a whoosh. Great job, Honda. I know I keep on recording and I keep on repeating myself to some extent, but you know, if you can drive a car for about 15-20 minutes and continue to feel impressed, well, that's a great sign. And I find myself wanting to squeeze every last minute out of my experience. It feels like they benchmarked Mazda quite a bit on this one. I think Mazda's booming sales when it comes to the CX-5, and the magic formula that Mazda hit with their CX-5. Honda must have taken notice of that. The CRV did not. The CRV's gone back and forth from generation to generation. Kind of a too hot, too cold, too hot, too cold. And even in between generations, they make it softer, they make it firmer, they make it softer, and it's kind of indecisive in a way in what the CRV should be. But I think they've struck a really good balance here. They've struck a, like, we're talking about a low 30s $1,000 car, which I think for what you get here, that feels like a reasonable number. When's the last time you heard me or anyone else say that's a reasonable amount of money for that car? Okay, so now we're on the highway, 50 miles an hour. 60. Good car is good. Again, I find myself in economy mode and drive, and I do that to keep the engine from getting too present and prominent. So vertical on the speedometer is 70. I'd say that seems to be a good indicator. no pun intended, of the car's intended cruising speed. 70 feels pretty good. Let's try the lane watch system. I could see my parents jumping into this car and being pretty happy with it. And boy, are they picky. My dad's a E39 M5 owner, my mom E46 3 Series owner, both since new. It's hard to get them a car. It's hard to get them a car they're happy in. I think they might be happy in one like this. Again, I think the hybrid's the way to go. It's not the most fuel efficient hybrid on the market, but man, I think it's going to be a good package. I can't wait to try it. Okay, now I'm going to do a hard braking. Let's see. Tire grip longitudinally is less impressive than it is laterally, which is interesting. Wasn't expecting that. But definitely not bad. It's just, again, we're in a tall vehicle. I'm tossing it around one-handed, feeling very confident and in control. That's another thing. This car has more control than it does power. And as hard as the engine has to work and how it has to sing for its supper, I think I'll take this over a lot of the competition, which is getting people's wallets and eyeballs because, oh, look at, like, even if you think about people's response to a RAV4 hybrid. Oh, it's so fast. It's so fast. Fastest Toyota, except for the Supra, which isn't a Toyota. Yeah, so what? You've got people in the car, you've got kids in the car, you've got stuff in the car. It's not a benefit to have a super responsive accelerator, super powerful acceleration. You want a car that you can just commute in, and not an A to B car, but it flatters you. I have yet to put two hands on the wheel, and I am a huge proponent of two hands on the wheel. But in forgetting my camera mount today, I wanted to be able to share this. And I feel like I was able to do all this and drive the car swiftly and safely with my attention focused on the road and one of my hands on the wheel. Now, when I put two on the wheel, the experience is going to get even better. The moral of the story is don't drive as I am, one-handed, and don't leave home as I did without your mount if you're wanting to take a video and share your experience with others. So yeah, to wrap up, to sum up, I wouldn't say rush out to buy this car, but I'd say put the CRV on your list far above RAV4. Again, helpful, thank you. Maybe a little too alarming or alarmed about proximity, given I am no longer moving towards the object. But yeah, good car is very good. Welcome back, Honda. It's nice to be able to suggest a Honda to folks again. It's nice to be able to enjoy driving a Honda again. I enjoy this. I think I enjoy this more than I do the Civic. One other question this brings to mind is, so where does the HRV fit in? Well, if you don't need the space of the CRV, do you just get an HRV? Perhaps, but the HRV feels less upscale. And in fact, I would say it feels more, I don't want to say basic transportation, but I think if you're looking for something that makes you feel like you got more than you paid for, the CRV fits that brief a little bit better. The HRV has a little more of this sort of Honda simplicity to it. I have to say I really did like that car as well, but again, you've got a car where the powertrain is having to work very hard to keep up, and it ends up droning a bit and feeling a bit overworked. So I think, you've got, the good news is you've got some very interesting options now at Honda, and that's something that I've not been able to say for quite some time. I've never really been one to damn or praise a brand wholesale, but the Honda definitely, I'd say you can't go wrong really with any Honda in this generation of Honda. This generation where the dashboard sort of points the way to a better passenger experience, and the driving position just sort of signals to you that this car is set up by people who enjoy driving and respect their customers and their need to drive. So I hope that this was helpful. I know that it was long-winded, but I'm a bit excited about the car, given what a utilitarian device it is. I feel relieved that the average consumer has an option that is recommendable for not a exorbitant amount of money. Signing off for now. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've experienced the car yourself and what you found that I may have overlooked.